and welcome to this week's episode of the Goodrum Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Yes, it's the late Christmas episode of the show. As you well know, December is quite a busy month in the shop, funnily enough, and so pressures of work and the odd bout of illness kind of made a bit of a mess of this December, it has to be said. So unfortunately I wasn't able to get this episode of the show in before Christmas, so I thought, well, it's a bank holiday, I'll do it today, why not? And as you can see, I have the festive accoutrements as tradition dictates, and silly hat, silly crown, anyway, ho ho ho, as they say. So I hope you had a good Christmas. Hopefully if you or sort of a member of your family and what have you sort of purchased a bottle in the shop over the Christmas period, then I hope you had got a good one, and if you didn't get a good one, then well, please keep your comments to yourself. Obviously I'm hoping that anybody that purchased a bottle of whiskey from us certainly got a good one and enjoyed it. Anyway, so I thought this year for the Christmas episode of the show I would stay at home, literally and figuratively, I guess. And so, as you know, big fan of English whiskey, I thought it would be a fitting way to end the, or to see in the festive period, as the case may be, with a selection of English whiskies. A couple of distilleries that are pretty well known to you and to myself in Filey Bay and White Peaks Distillery, but I also got sent samples a little while ago by the Oxford Artisan Distillery, so big thank you to the guys there for the samples. And they kindly sent me a couple of samples of their rye, and I'd never tasted anything. I hadn't even tasted their gin or anything, although I'd heard an awful lot about them, and obviously the distillery itself was founded in 2017, and with a bit of a kind of sort of mindset of Waterford, in that they wanted to look at sort of like sustainability, heritage varieties, specifically rye varieties, I believe. They had two, should we say, technically two custom-made stills, which all the information is on their website. Lovely website, lots of information, but the stills weren't actually made by your normal, Forsyths or the one of the more regular still builders. They actually approached South Devon Railway Engineering to produce them, and they came up with a couple of really intriguing looking stills. Apparently they took the sort of inspiration from Jules Verne and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and so they have I assume it's a wash still which is called Nautilus, which is 2,400 litres, and a smaller spirit still called Nemo, 500 litres, coupled with two 5 metre tall 40 plate column stills. And you look at them and the whole thing is all very Victorian, Jules Verne. Apparently they took a porthole or something like that from an old ship, and they're really cool looking stills, it has to be said. But of course, as with everything, it's not necessarily about all the sort of how cool your building and your distillery is. It's what's the quality of your spirit like. So we will obviously get to those two rye bottlings in due course. Obviously they went down the usual path, like I said, gin, vodka, put aside the rye whiskey, and that the rye whiskey started to be released in 2021. So we're on to, I believe, batch 7 and 8. So looking forward to tasting them at the end. The other two distilleries, obviously Filey Bay, looking at 2 new releases from them, and likewise the same with White Peaks. So I don't really need to say an awful lot about those 2 distilleries because I've reviewed them in the past. So just going to crack on and introduce the lineup. So we're going to kick off with 2 Filey Bay bottlings, 2 new ones. So this is batch number 1 of their port finish, bottled at 46%, and the second bottling, my balls are falling over, So this is batch number 3 of the Sherry Reserve, also bottled at 46% and finished or matured entirely, I forget which now, in ex-fino sherry cask, so that should be quite interesting. Then we're going to move on to batch number 8 of the Wireworks. My balls are rolling around. I can't never work with accoutrements, as they say. So yeah, so we're going to look at batch number 8 of the Wireworks release, bottled at 51.7% and finished in ex-virgin oak. So I'm guessing, hopefully, bourbon and virgin oak. Ooh, might actually determine some distillery character. You never know. Then we're going to look at batch number 6. Which is the usual mix of casks, STR and ex-bourbon casks. So that's more like what they have been releasing in the past. So be interesting to see what that bottling is like. Then we're going to move on to the first of the 2 Oxford rye whiskies. This is batch number 7, called Easy Rider. It is bottled at 50% and is a batch of 9 ex-American oak casks. And the final bottling is batch number 8, which is the Purple Grain Anniversary Edition. I'm guessing bottled at cask strength because it's bottled at 63.6. It's comprised of 4 casks, 2, 9, 6, 9, 7, 9, 8 and 9, 9. So the spirit spent 2 years in American oak, with 1 year finishing in 220 litre Moscatel Roxo casks. So I think that should be quite intriguing. So right, there you go. So rye whiskey finished in Moscatel casks. Yeah, can't say I've come across too many of those. So really looking forward to trying that one. So, but anyway, before we get there, let's kick off with a bit of Filey Bay then, shall we? Okay, so let's take a look at batch 1 of the port finish. Well, I mean, as you well know, big fan of Filey Bay. They just seem to be getting their finishing absolutely spot on. It's not too porty. I've got plenty of the distillery character, that slightly bubblegummy, sort of fruity, white fruit, apricot. There's a little bit of raspberry, some strawberry. There's some lovely barley notes. It's got that freshness. I mean, I love it. I think it's beautifully balanced, and you know, whenever I always look forward to a new release from them, you know, because so far I've not really been disappointed. It has to be said. And this just is just wonderfully balanced. It's just how to do a portwood finish, in my personal opinion. Let's see what passes on. Gorgeously fruity, sweet but not too sweet. Kicks off with a little bit more of the port notes, a bit more red black fruit, but then the estery, pineapple, apricot, apple, white fruit moves in on the mid palate. Little bit of spice, touch of oak, touch of barley, lovely length, and again just a gorgeously fruity whiskey. It is just as a delight. It just is my kind of whiskey. It's a whiskey that I kind of want to drink. It's got no harshness, no edginess. It's got a lovely soft fruitiness, and yeah, I like I said, I think what the distillery is doing is pretty damn good. So yeah, good one to start with. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Sherry Reserve. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Now, okay, so there is a fair degree of sherry, but again, I think the balance is pretty good. But we're not in the sort of leafy, I mean, yes, it is slightly leafy, but we're not in the sort of raisinated, dark, Oloroso, masking kind of fruit. We're getting sort of more lighter, sort of sultana, dried apricot, dried citrus rind. that kind of character. Again, I'm getting the distillery character. I'm getting the estery white fruit, a little bit of banana, the apricot, pineapple, white peach. There's some lovely spices, a little bit of pepper. You're getting a little bit of that sherried dried fruit coming through, but like I said, the lighter dried fruits as opposed to the more darker Oloroso-y dried fruits, and just divine, absolutely gorgeous, and just goes to show that you don't need to have, you know, loads and loads of maturity. It's all about the production process. If you're aiming your production process at that kind of sort of fruity, estery kind of character, you know, it will bottle earlier. And as they say, you know, a whiskey is ready to bottle when it's ready to bottle. It doesn't matter if it's 5, 8 or 58, you know, it's when it's ready. And this is just a gorgeous whiskey. I should pass on. Okay, there's more sherry on the palate, but it's still not a monster. I can just about detect the distillery character underneath. Maybe that's because I'm looking for it, but I can get the estery white fruits just about underneath the lighter sort of sultana, dried apricot, you know, fino sherry kind of character. Not particularly salty, actually. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of salt on the finish. Some lovely spices, good length, nice grip to it, good progression. It's, again, a lovely whiskey. Like I said, you know, I love the nose. The nose had possibly a little more balance than the palate, but certainly, you know, the palate displayed enough distillery character to sort of stop it being a one-dimensional sherry monster. So in that respect, I think that worked really, really well. Right, okay, so moving on to the first of the Wireworks bottling. So this is batch number 8, finished in ex-virgin oak. Okay, it is quite oaky. I mean, there's no getting away from that. You know, to enjoy this kind of whiskey, you're going to have to love your oak, and it's got plenty of tight vanilla, grippy, spicy new oak tannins. But I get some estery fruit. I get some white fruit, some banana. It's not quite as bubblegummy as Filey Bay, but it has a lightness to it, and there is a sort of almost similarity. So is this the style of the spirit that comes off the still at Wireworks, or at White Peaks, as the case may be? Well, it would seem to indicate that is the case. I had always was working under the impression it was a little bit more of a traditional kind of style, but maybe it isn't. Either way, it's really nice to see it in a different light, other than, you know, lots of STR cask. But I mean, it's still pretty oaky. I mean, again, I think maybe once it's got a bit more maturity, that the distillery will dial down the overt oak character. But it's a fascinating journey, I think, so far. I mean, I've really enjoyed all of the bottlings that they've released. Yeah, okay, some haven't quite, well, some are kind of work in progress kind of thing, but it's interesting to kind of like carry on charting the progress of the distillery and the spirit in actual fact. So let's see what the pass on. Again, a lot of oak, but it kicks off with some oily barley, maybe not quite so estery now on the palate, more barleyed, again, has a more traditional feel to it, tight tannins, a little bit of peat smoke, almost sort of a stringent sort of green peat wood smoke, quite grippy, a little bit masked, peppery, intense. I mean, that's great spirit. I mean, really good quality spirit. Lovely. Really, really like that. And again, like I said, it's nice to see something other than the spirit being not masked, but the overt use of STR casks. Oh, that's a lovely nose now. I mean, just that little drop of water has opened it up absolutely gorgeously. Sweetened the oak vanillins, less taut, so more juicy, more sweeter vanilla. Oh, that is lovely. That is absolutely gorgeous. Let's see what that's like. Juicier, softer, but like the nose, less taut, not quite so peated now. The peat seems to have not totally disappeared. There's a little bit of it on the finish. Nice spiciness, more barley, a little bit of white fruit. I mean, that is a lovely spirit. That's really harmonious. That's worked with the virgin oak casks. Yeah, I think that this is going to carry on sort of going really quite nicely. I'm certainly looking forward to the spirit gaining more maturity and just seeing how it sort of develops. I mean, I think this is just going to be sort of really intriguing. So yeah, that's a bloody good bottle. Right, okay, so let's take a look at batch number 6, so 47.7% STR and bourbon. Quite a lot of STR casks, a bit like sort of batch 4, I think it was. I forget which batch it was now. Lots of red cherry, berry, currants, a little bit of rose petal spirit, and a little bit of vanilla. Not a great deal of spirit character. Certainly I don't get the sort of estery white fruits that I got with the batch number 8. Or maybe there is a little bit there. Maybe, you know, I'm kind of being a bit slightly bit disingenuous. Maybe there's a smidge there, or is it because I'm looking for it? Again, it's kind of, you know, is it there? Is it not there? I think it is. I think they've I wouldn't say done the spirit a disservice. I don't think it needed all this STR cask. I really think they could have been a little bit more judicious, because the spirit has got some lovely fruitiness. But you know, I like the nose. I think it's just about balanced. Again, I think you need to like sort of like oak in your whiskey if you're going to enjoy this. But that's certainly a pleasant nose. Let's see what that's like. Quite chocolatey, but dry chocolate, unsweetened, sort of dark chocolate. Juicy red fruits, currant, berry, moves into vanilla, a little bit of barley. Not getting as much distillery character as, all right, you could argue there wasn't a great deal of distillery character on the nose, but I'm not getting an awful lot. There's a little bit of apricot, possibly a little bit of barley, but I'm not getting those sort of lovely white fruits that I got with the batch number 8. It's a little bit young. There's a sort of an edge there, a little bit of a rose petally kind of marry note just on the finish, saying this is a young spirit. I like it. Again, it's got character. I mean, yes, all right, you can argue that a lot of the character is the wood, but it's a clean spirit. It's fun. It's got some grip to it. It's, you know, something to sort of contemplate. I mean, it has progression. I mean, it certainly kicks off with the STR cask, moves into the bourbon, and then finally sort of you get a little bit of spirit character. Again, I think this is, you know, as the sort of spirit develops, and it's obviously got some lovely fruitiness, unless of course they've tinkered with the you know, the sort of the fermentation length and all that kind of stuff, you know, in between these two batches. Who I don't know, it's possible, I suppose, but you know, I think it's just an intriguing whiskey at the end of the day. It's certainly a well-made whiskey, and it'll be, like I said, interesting to sort of like chart its progress. So although I think I kind of enjoyed the batch 8 more because it had a little bit more distillery character, I still think this particular batch is still really nice. So yeah, good whiskey. Right, okay, so let's move on to the first of the 2 Oxford Ryes. So this is batch number 7, Easy Rider. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Soft, chocolatey, and getting almost kind of pure cocoa nibs. Sweet vanilla, spice. But the spice is very soft. It's certainly not your sort of intense, astringent American style rye. It has to be said. It has a definite softness to it. A little bit of green spice, some chocolate, white chocolate, hazelnut. It's got the sort of the rye spice that you would expect, but like I said, it's a softer spice. It's kind of a more restrained. It's not kind of in your face. It's not brash. It's not American. It's just English. And you know, it just seems yeah, a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more laid back, a little bit more sort of touch more decorum, possibly. Certainly, it is very different from an American rye, it has to be said, or a European rye, because it actually smells like it has some maturity. Unlike some European ryes. I like this nose. I think this is a lovely nose. It's understated but deep, chocolatey, and just bloody good. So about time. A little drier, spicier, more dried chocolate, tannic, mid palate. Kicks off with some nice vanilla, some charred oak notes. Again, soft, slightly chocolatey rye. Doesn't have the astringency of an American rye. Sweet vanilla. Lovely, almost kind of barleyed sweetness on the mid palate. Does bitter a little bit on the finish, but you know that it's just all really well contained, and just gives the finish that sort of little bit of a kick, which I kind of like. I mean, if it's overly bitter, I wouldn't be so impressed, but the bitterness is well contained, and it's got that sort of slight sort of tannic rye bitter character just kind of on the finish, and it just gives it some interest. Slight herbal note too. I like that. I think that's really very, very good. Again, it says English rye to me. I mean, I must admit, I've not tasted a vast amount of English rye, but you know, it's definitely not an American rye. And like I said, it's more laid back, a little bit more relaxed, a little bit softer, and just really, really good. Right, okay, so let's move on to the last bottling of the afternoon. This is batch number 8, the Purple Grain Anniversary Edition. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Well, that's quite interesting. It's winey, it's grapey. I'm getting the obvious Muscatel character, that sort of marmalade-y fruits, a little bit of biscuitiness, almost raisinated, almond, walnut. Again, I'm underneath that there is some noticeable chocolatey rye, a little bit of spice. It's got a little bit more of an edge to it, but I think that's more down to the Muscatel cask and the higher ABV. It's got a, but underneath that, it has that softness that I found in batch number 7, and that sort of soft, almost chocolatey rye kind of character. A little bit of spice and vanilla. That's an interesting nose. That has really worked quite well. That's certainly not something I would ever thought of, you know, finishing, you know, rye in Muscatel casks. But you know what? That's different, interesting, and I like different and interesting. See what that's like. You wouldn't have thought that's 53%, I can tell you that. It's so wonderfully soft still. There's an edge there, but it's that sort of Muscatel edge, edgy, sort of marmalade-y, sort of macerated dried fruits. The rye kind of, again, comes through on the mid-palate, soft, juicy, chocolatey. All the while that alcohol is giving it a lovely vibrancy. Touch of hazelnut. Good length. I mean, it's not masked. The alcohol is just so well contained. You really do not need any water with that. You don't need to dilute it. I mean, I will put a little drop of water with it just to see what happens, but it's just so beautifully balanced. It doesn't really need it. Now it does bring out a little bit more of the chocolatey rye, and although the sort of the Muscatel is not quite so sort of dark and intense, it's a little bit lighter now with a little bit more kind of marmalade-y sort of orange peel. It's still lovely, absolutely gorgeous, really nicely balanced. And the rye has obviously got lots of character, and it stands up to the Muscatel really well. Softer, a little bit more astringent now. The finish has gone a little bit, and it's got a little green and astringent and a little bit hard on the finish. I think I prefer it without out diluting it, to be bluntly honest with you. It has kind of, like I said, brought out that sort of green astringency. But overall, I really like that. I think that's a superb whiskey, it has to be said, and unusual but really balanced. And you know, I personally wouldn't bother putting any water with it. But yeah, pretty good finish, I think. Right, okay, so let's sum today's episode of the show up. Firstly, a big thank you to Filey Bay, to White Peaks and the Oxford Artisan Distillery for the samples for today's episode of the show. Hope you guys thought that was a fair review. The two Filey Bay bottlings, I you know, big fan. I mean, so far they haven't disappointed me at all. The balance of the cask to the spirit is absolutely spot on. The style of the spirit is completely to my kind of liking, and you know, I urge you to try it. If you've not tasted anything from Filey Bay as yet, I would say start off with the flagship. The flagship bottling, ex-American oak, just sets out their store, what the spirit character is like, and it's just beautiful. But these two were really good. The Virgin Oak batch number 8 from White Peak, really good. I mean, lovely to see something slightly different. I've not tasted all of the batches, obviously. I only get what I'm given to a certain extent. But this batch is really very much has impressed me incredibly, and it shows that the distillery has some distillery character there, some lovely sort of fruitiness, and it, like I said, nice to see it without any STR cask. Although in saying that, I do like the STR cask bottling. Yeah, it's all right. It's a bit heavy on the STR cask, and again, it's the sort of style of whiskey you would have to, it's very oaky, straight off the bat. So it's just kind of, you would have to love oak to sort of, appreciate the style of the spirit, the whiskey. But give it some time, you work with it, and you'd realise there is a little bit more to it than just a boatload of oak. The Oxford Rye, the batch number 7, I really liked that. I mean, it was just so different to American rye, and that's exactly what you want. I mean, the amount of times that sort of customers say, when you have Swedish or Swiss or American or whatever kind of whiskey, say, well, what makes it so different, and sometimes there isn't really a defining point. You can't just sort of say, well, it's X, because every distillery is different, but it's nice to sort of try something and go, oh yeah, that really is quite different, and certainly the Oxford Rye is just very different to any other rye, and you can't kind of argue with that, I suppose. And the batch number 8, that worked really, really well. I thought that was a very, very impressive whiskey. Worked with the Muscatel, not quite so keen on it with a little bit of water, but didn't really need it, even though it was 53%. The alcohol was so well contained that it didn't need it, like I said. Yep, so that's this week's episode of the show in the bag. Hopefully there'll be another episode of the show next weekend. Don't know what that's going to be, but anyway, like I said, all I have to say is good dramming, and I hope you had a good festive period.